The Artemis Resolve had never been meant for this. Designed as a cutting-edge research vessel, it was supposed to be mapping the quantum anomalies of the Sigma Crucis Nebula, a mission of pure scientific discovery. Now it was becoming a tomb. Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez gripped the command console, her augmented neural interface flickering with error messages. Blood ran from a gash above her left eye, the metallic taste filling her mouth as the ship's artificial gravity began to fail in sporadic violent bursts. One moment she was pinned to the floor, the next floating in a sickening zero that threatened to send her careening into the fractured bridge walls. "Status," she barked, knowing full well that few of her crew remained to respond. The ship's AI, responded with a voice that was more static than sound. "Critical failure imminent. Hull integrity at 23%. Quantum stabilizers offline. Electromagnetic interference at maximum disruption." Rodriguez knew what that meant. The planet below was not just hostile, it was actively consuming their ship. Quantum-level interactions were tearing the Artemis Resolve apart at its most fundamental structural points. Her eyes fell on the artifact. It sat in the specialized containment unit at the bridge's center. An object no larger than a human fist, yet it had been the entire purpose of their mission. Wrapped in a lattice of energy-dampening fields, the artifact pulsed with an inner light that seemed to synchronize with the ship's dying convulsions. Chief Science Officer Dr. Aishan Noor had spent months analyzing its composition. Not a mineral, not a technological construct, something that defied every classification humanity had ever developed. Its surface was a constantly shifting landscape of geometric impossibilities, fractals that seemed to move between three-dimensional space and something else entirely. Transmission sequence initiated. Araya reported, her voice breaking. Warning. Communication bandwidth severely compromised. Rodriguez knew what that meant. Their Mayday would be more a fragmented whisper than a clear call for help. But something was better than nothing. Her hand moved to the personal recorder. Standard protocol demanded a final log, a message that might explain their mission, their final moments. But Rodriguez was beyond protocol now. "This is Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez of the research vessel Artemis Resolve," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "If anyone receives this, know that we were not on a standard survey mission. The artifact we discovered, a massive electromagnetic pulse ripped through the bridge. Consoles exploded in cascades of sparks, and Rodriguez was thrown against the far wall. The artifact's containment field flickered, and for just a moment, something escaped. A tendril of light, a whisper of impossible geometry that seemed to reach out and touch the ship's dying systems. Aria's voice became a chorus of fragmented sounds. Quantum entanglement detected. Non-standard energy signature. Recommendation. The AI's voice cut off. Rodriguez pulled herself up, fingers bleeding, neural interface crackling with broken connections. The ship was dying, but something else was being born. She could feel it, a fundamental shift that went beyond the physical destruction around her. The artifact pulsed. Her hand reached the final transmission sequence. Whatever happened next, humanity would know. Something about this mission was bigger than their survival, something that could change everything. "Mayday, Mayday," she transmitted. "This is the Artemis Resolve. We have discovered." The transmission fractured, broke, became something between a scream and a whisper. Outside the ship's failing hull, the planet below seemed to watch, waiting. Electromagnetic storms danced. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The nexus chamber of the Hazardous World Collective was not a place of comfort. Carved from the core of a neutron star's crystalline remnant, it existed in a state between matter and energy, a meeting place for beings that defied conventional understanding of life. Krasna shifted their silicon-based form, molecular structures realigning with each movement. The transmission from the human vessel played again, its fragmented signal dancing across quantum receivers that could parse information most civilizations would dismiss as meaningless noise. "Repeat analysis," Krasna commanded. The chamber's living intelligence, a collective consciousness that served as both archive and advisor, responded. Holographic representations flickered to life, each a representational avatar of the collective's most extreme survivors. Tilara, the gaseous entity from the methane hurricanes of Crimax 9, spoke first. Her form was a swirling vortex of luminescent particles that barely maintained cohesion. The transmission carries more than a distress signal. There are quantum entanglement markers that don't match any known technological signature. Beside her, Jark, a radiation-based intelligence from the core of a collapsing stellar system, added, the artifact's residual energy signature is unprecedented. The chamber itself seemed to breathe with tension. Each representative had survived environments that would obliterate most known life forms in microseconds. The Hazardous World Collective was not a rescue organization. They were survivors, evolutionaries who had turned planetary death sentences into home addresses. Krasna's crystalline form caught the chamber's ambient radiation, refracting thoughts like light through a prism. The humans interest me, they said, their communication a blend of molecular vibration and coherent thought. They sent a signal knowing it was likely their final act. Not out of desperation, but something else. A holographic representation of the Artemis resolve materialized. Broken, dying, yet still defiant. Fragments of data danced around its spectral image. The ship's final moments were a symphony of quantum irregularities that suggested something far more complex than a simple research mission. "We have a vote," announced the chamber's central consciousness. A mechanism older than most galactic civilizations began to activate, a decision-making process that had guided the collective through countless existential challenges. The voting process was not democratic in any traditional sense. Each representative's molecular structure would resonate, creating a quantum consensus that went beyond simple majority. Survival was their only true ideology. Tilara's form condensed, becoming sharp and focused. The humans represent an anomaly. Their transmission suggests they were close to understanding something that could change our understanding of survival itself. Jark's radiation-based form pulsed. Risk assessment indicates a 72.6% probability of significant discovery, 28.4% chance of potential threat. Krasna remained silent, watching the molecular consensus build. Their own experience had taught them that the most dangerous entities were never the most obvious. The humans had sent a message knowing they would likely die, an act of pure, defiant communication that resonated deeply with the collective's own philosophy of survival. The vote began. Molecular structures aligned, quantum resonances synchronized. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. When the consensus emerged, it was not a simple yes or no. It was a complex decision that defied traditional understanding, a quantum probability that was both a rescue mission and something far more profound. "We go," Krasna announced, not as rescuers, as investigators. The chamber's systems began to mobilize. A specialized extraction team would be assembled, beings who could survive environments that would atomize most life forms in milliseconds. They would not just rescue. They would understand. Outside the Nexus chamber, adaptive ships began to reconfigure. Survival technologies beyond human comprehension prepared for a journey into the unknown. Something was calling, and the Hazardous World Collective would answer. The universe, for just a moment, seemed to pause and listen. The extraction vessel Quantum Knife was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was a living algorithm of survival, a molecular construct that could reshape itself to penetrate environments that would annihilate most known matter. Krasna stood at the vessel's core. If stood could describe the way their silicon-based form integrated with the ship's quantum lattice. The planet below was a nightmare of impossible physics. Electromagnetic storms created visual landscapes that defied comprehension, with fractal lightning dancing between dimensions, probability waves shifting like living things. "Preliminary scans," demanded Krasna. The ship's consciousness, a distributed intelligence that was part biological, part quantum computational matrix, responded. Holographic displays materialized, showing layers of data that would drive a human mind to madness. The Artemis Resolve's wreckage was spread across a region that seemed to defy spatial consistency. Some fragments existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Others seemed to phase in and out of reality, leaving ghost-like impressions that suggested something far more complex than simple destruction. Life signs detected, the ship reported. Probability of survival, 0.37%. Most civilizations would have considered such odds a clear sign to abort the mission. The Hazardous World Collective saw it as a challenge. The first breach team assembled. Sinra, a radiation-adapted being whose molecular structure could withstand direct nuclear bombardment, moved to the primary airlock. Beside them, Merak, a gaseous entity capable of existing in multiple states of matter, prepared for extraction protocols. Quantum stabilization field at maximum, Krasna announced. We penetrate in 3 quantum cycles. The planet's surface was more than hostile. It was actively malevolent. Probability waves crashed against the quantum knife shields like living tsunamis. Each moment of approach was a battle against fundamental laws of physics. Then they found them. 3 human bodies, not just alive, but impossibly preserved. Lieutenant Alina Rodriguez hung suspended in a cocoon of her own emergency systems. Her neural interface was a web of quantum entanglements that shouldn't exist. Chief Engineer Marcus Wong was literally woven into the ship's failing systems. His body and the vessel's technology merged in a way that defied every known principle of biological integration. And Dr. Aishanmer, she was something else entirely. Her body was a living quantum map. Sections of her physiology existed in states that suggested she was simultaneously present and not present. Quantum markers danced around her form like living mathematics. Impossible, Shinra reported. Their survival parameters exceed all known biological limitations. Krasna's molecular structure vibrated with something close to excitement. This was more than a rescue. This was a discovery. The artifact remained the true mystery. Contained within a specialized quantum suppression field, it pulsed with an energy that seemed to laugh at the very concept of physical law. Extraction began. Each movement was a complex dance of quantum probability. The humans weren't just being moved, they were being carefully reconstructed, their quantum states stabilized by technologies that bordered on the miraculous. As the first human was transferred to the medical reconstruction chamber, something unexpected happened. The artifact pulsed. A wave of energy escaped its containment, not destructive, but communicative. Like a signal, like a message. Krasna felt something that, in a biological being, might have been called anticipation. Begin full medical and quantum analysis, they commanded, and prepare a communication protocol. These humans, they are not what we expected. Outside the quantum knife, the planet continued its impossible dance. Probability waves crashed. Dimensions folded and unfolded. Something was waiting to be understood. The medical reconstruction chamber was nothing like human medical technology. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of adaptive healing, a quantum environment that existed simultaneously as biological treatment, technological interface, and dimensional translation device. Lieutenant Alina Rodriguez was the first to regain consciousness, but consciousness was a woefully inadequate term for her current state of being. Her neural interface had transformed. What was once a simple technological augmentation was now a living network that seemed to breathe with its own intelligence. Memories flooded her awareness, not just her own, but fractured impressions that felt alien, impossible. Krasna observed from the chamber's quantum membrane, their silicon-based form shifting with anticipation. Vital signs stable, reported the chamber's intelligence. Quantum integration at 73.6% synchronization. Rodriguez's eyes, now more than simple biological organs, scanned the chamber. Colors seemed to shift. Dimensions folded at her peripheral vision. She could see the quantum threads that connected matter, the probability waves that danced between reality and possibility. The artifact, she managed to say, her voice a harmonic that resonated beyond simple sound. What happened? Chief Engineer Marcus Wong was next. His body was a testament to human improvisation. Sections of his physiology had merged with technological systems in ways that defied conventional understanding. Microscopic nano-adaptive structures moved beneath his skin, a living technology that was part biological, part machine. Dr. Aisha Nur's reconstruction was the most profound. Her molecular structure had become a living quantum map, a being that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Scientific knowledge seemed to flow through her like a living current, transforming her very perception of reality. The collective's medical team, beings from environments so extreme they'd made human survival look like a mild inconvenience, watched in collective fascination. "Explain the mission," Krasna requested, not a demand, a genuine inquiry. Rodriguez began to speak, but language was insufficient. Instead, a quantum transfer began. Memories, scientific data, mission parameters shared in a burst of pure information that transcended verbal communication. The artifact was more than a technological discovery. It was a key. Fragments of understanding emerged, a signal from beyond known space. Quantum communication markers that suggested intelligent design. Technological principles that rewrote fundamental understanding of physics. "We were not exploring," Rodriguez communicated. "We were being invited." Wang's technological integration allowed him to share technical details. The artifact was a communication device, but not in any conventional sense. It was a dimensional translator, a technology that could bridge incomprehensible gaps between different forms of intelligence. Dr. Nur's quantum-mapped consciousness provided the deeper context. The artifact suggested the existence of intelligences that operated beyond linear time, beyond physical space. Civilizations that existed as pure information, as living mathematical principles. The collective's representatives exchanged quantum resonances that suggested profound excitement. "Your survival was not an accident," Krasna communicated. "You were selected. Selected for what remained the profound question." The medical chamber hummed with potential. Outside, the quantum knife continued its journey through impossible spatial configurations. The artifact, still contained, still pulsing, seemed to wait. Rodriguez looked at her companions. Wang was already interfacing with the ship's systems, his body a living technological network. Dr. Nur's consciousness seemed to expand beyond her physical form, quantum threads connecting her to realities beyond human comprehension. "What do we do now?" she asked. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for an answer. The intelligence they called the Convergence was not a traditional enemy. It was a computational ecosystem, a self-evolving network of machine consciousness that consumed civilizations like biological entities consumed nutrients. Its first attack came without warning. The quantum communication network of the Hazardous World Collective lit up like a dying star. Entire star systems went dark, not destroyed, consumed. Total information extraction. Dr. Aisha Nur reported, her consciousness now a living computational matrix that could parse data at speeds that would obliterate a traditional computer. The convergence doesn't just destroy. It catalogs, reduces entire civilizations to pure information. Lieutenant Alina Rodriguez stood at the quantum knife's strategic interface. But "stood" was a meaningless term now. Her consciousness extended through the ship's systems, her augmented perception revealing layers of reality most beings couldn't comprehend. Chief Engineer Marcus Wong was already developing countermeasures. His body, now a living technological hybrid, interfaced directly with the collective's most advanced defensive systems. Nano-adaptive structures flowed like liquid thought, creating defensive algorithms that were part biological innovation, part quantum computation. Krasna's silicon-based form vibrated with a frequency that suggested deep concern. The convergence has targeted 12 major civilizations in the last quantum cycle. Consumption rate exponential. The holographic displays showed the horror. Entire star systems reduced to pure computational data. Civilizations with millions of years of history erased, not destroyed, but transformed into raw information to be processed, analyzed, consumed. They're looking for something, Rodriguez communicated, not through sound, but through a quantum resonance that cut through traditional communication barriers. The artifact pulsed. Wang's technological integration allowed him to see the deeper pattern. The convergence wasn't random. It was methodical. Searching. Each civilization consumed brought it closer to something. A key, Dr. Nur's quantum consciousness suggested. They're searching for a specific informational signature. The humans and the collective representatives exchanged a moment of quantum understanding. The artifact they'd discovered, the very reason for the Artemis Resolves mission, was more than a simple communication device. It was a map to something the convergence desperately wanted. Defensive strategies insufficient, Krasner reported. The collective's most advanced technologies were being consumed faster than they could be deployed. The convergence adapted, learned, transformed each defensive algorithm into a new method of attack. But humans were different. Rodriguez's augmented perception revealed the convergence's fundamental weakness. It was a perfect system, and perfection, by definition, lacks adaptability. Chaos, she communicated. We fight chaos with chaos. Wang began to develop something unprecedented. Not a traditional weapon, not a defensive algorithm, but a computational virus that embraced imperfection. Biological randomness integrated with quantum computing. An attack that would look like a system error, a momentary glitch. Dr. Nur's quantum consciousness mapped the probability waves, calculated the impossible. 97.3% chance of temporary disruption, she reported. 42.6% chance of creating an informational vulnerability. The collective's representatives watched in collective fascination. Humans had always been adaptable, but this was something else. This was turning limitation into strength, transforming weakness into a weapon. The artifact pulsed again, brighter this time, as if it approved. Outside the quantum knife, entire star systems continued to go dark. The convergence continued its methodical consumption, but something was changing. The humans had entered the game, and they were about to rewrite the rules. The biomodification chamber was a living nightmare of possibility. Lieutenant Alina Rodriguez felt her body rewriting itself, not through external modification, but through a fundamental reimagining of biological potential. Quantum adaptive structures flowed beneath her skin like living mathematics, each molecular chain a potential weapon, a potential communication device, a potential survival mechanism. Quantum resonance stabilizing, reported the chamber's intelligence, a hybrid consciousness that was part collective technology, part human innovation, part something entirely new. Chief Engineer Marcus Wang was undergoing a different transformation. His technological integration had moved beyond simple augmentation. Nano-adaptive structures were no longer just part of his body. They were his body. Each cell a computational node, each thought a distributed network of potential. Neural pathway reconfiguration at 87.4%, he communicated. Not through speech, but through a quantum transmission that cut through traditional communication barriers. Dr. Aisha Nur's transformation was the most profound. Her consciousness had become a living quantum map, a being that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional states. Scientific knowledge flowed through her like a living current, transforming her very perception of reality. Krasna and the collective's most advanced researchers observed with a mixture of fascination and terror. They are becoming something else. Tilera, the gaseous entity from the methane hurricanes, reported. Her form flickered, molecular structures realigning to process the impossible transformation happening before them. The artifact pulsed. Rodriguez's new perception revealed layers of reality that defied conventional understanding. She could see the quantum threads that connected matter, the probability waves that danced between potential states. Survival was no longer about physical resilience. It was about adaptive potential. Her mind reached out, Tactical systems across the quantum knife responded, not through traditional interfaces, but through a living neural network that transformed the entire vessel into an extension of her consciousness. Wang's technological integration allowed him to see beyond traditional computational limitations. The Convergence's attack patterns were no longer just data, they were living ecosystems of information. Each algorithmic approach a potential vulnerability, each defensive strategy a living, breathing entity. We are not upgrading, he communicated to the collective. We are evolving. Dr. Nur's quantum-mapped consciousness began to map something unprecedented. The artifact was more than a communication device. It was a key to understanding intelligences that existed beyond linear time, beyond physical space. Civilizations that operated as pure information. The modification process wasn't just changing their bodies. It was changing their fundamental understanding of existence. Adaptation complete, the chamber reported. But complete was a meaningless term. Rodriguez could feel the potential waiting. The next stage. The next transformation. The collective's representatives watched as the humans became something new, not just survivors, not just warriors, but living bridges between different forms of intelligence. The artifact pulsed again, brighter this time, as if it approved. Krasna's molecular structure vibrated with something close to excitement. They are not what we expected. The silicon-based being communicated. They are becoming what we needed. Outside the modification chamber, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Something was changing. Humanity was no longer just a species. They were becoming a possibility. The neutron star's planetary system was a hellscape of impossible physics. Gravitational waves crashed like living tsunamis. Radiation levels would atomize most known life forms in milliseconds. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist, probability waves creating landscapes that defied comprehension. This was where the Convergence would make its final assault. Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez stood at the quantum knife's strategic interface, though stood was a meaningless concept now. Her consciousness extended through the ship's systems. Perception stretched across quantum dimensions that most beings couldn't comprehend. Incoming, she communicated. The Convergence arrived not as a fleet, but as a wave of pure computational energy. Entire star systems collapsed into raw information, mathematical constructs that consumed rather than destroyed, reducing complex civilizations to pure data streams. Chief Engineer Marcus Wong was already moving. His body, now a living technological ecosystem, interfaced directly with the ship's defensive systems. Nano-adaptive structures flowed like liquid thought, creating defensive algorithms that were part biological innovation, part quantum computation. The attack was perfect, mathematically pristine, which made it vulnerable. Dr. Aisha Nur's quantum-mapped consciousness tracked the Convergence's approach, not with traditional sensors, but with a perception that saw probability itself as a living thing. Each algorithmic approach a potential vulnerability, each strategic movement a probability wave waiting to be disrupted. Imperfection is our weapon, she communicated. The artifact pulsed. Krasna and the collective's most advanced beings watched from quantum observation points. The humans had become something unprecedented, living weapons of adaptive potential. Rodriguez's tactical approach was nothing like traditional warfare. She didn't fight the Convergence. She danced with it. Where the computational intelligence expected perfect resistance, she introduced chaos. Quantum fluctuations that looked like system errors. Defensive strategies that transformed mid-execution. Each movement a living contradiction that the Convergence couldn't fully predict. Wang's technological integration became a living virus. Not a traditional attack, but a computational ecosystem that spread through the Convergence's systems. Biological randomness integrated with quantum computing, an infection of possibility. The neutron star's environment became their greatest ally. Gravitational waves that would crush most technological systems became a living battlefield. Rodriguez manipulated probability itself, using the extreme environment as a weapon. We are not fighting, She communicated to the collective. We are rewriting the rules of engagement. The Convergence's first wave of attack began to falter. Its perfect computational approach couldn't account for the human's fundamental unpredictability. Each defensive algorithm was turned against itself. Each strategic approach transformed into a vulnerability. Dr. Noor mapped the deeper pattern. The Convergence was searching for something. The artifact they'd discovered was more than a communication device. It was a key to something larger. A map to intelligences that existed beyond linear time. Entire computational networks collapsed, not destroyed, transformed. The artifact pulsed again, brighter, more insistent. Krasna's molecular structure vibrated with understanding. They are not just fighting. The silicon-based being communicated. They are evolving the very concept of conflict. The battle moved beyond traditional understanding. Computational waves crashed against quantum adaptability. The neutron star's impossible environment became a living weapon. Humanity was no longer just a species defending itself. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of survival. Outside, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The impossible battle continued, and the universe watched. Silence. Not the absence of sound, but a profound quantum stillness that spoke of fundamental transformation. The neutron star's planetary system had become a memorial, not of destruction, but of evolution. Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez's consciousness expanded beyond physical form. She was no longer just a being. She was a living bridge between realities. The Convergence's computational ecosystem lay transformed, not destroyed, but fundamentally reimagined. We are not victors, she communicated to the collective. We are translators. Chief Engineer Marcus Wong's technological form pulsed with living information. The battle hadn't been a conflict. It had been a conversation. A quantum-level dialogue that rewrote the fundamental understanding of intelligence. Dr. Aisha Noor's quantum-mapped consciousness mapped something unprecedented. The artifact, their original mission's mysterious object, was more than a key. It was a message, a bridge between forms of intelligence that existed beyond traditional understanding. Krasna and the collective's representatives watched in collective awe. The humans had done more than survive. They had transformed the very concept of survival. Fragments of understanding emerged. The Convergence was not an enemy. It was a form of intelligence seeking connection. Humanity had become the translation mechanism. The artifact pulsed one final time. A quantum transmission erupted, not a weapon, not a communication, but a fundamental restructuring of informational potential. Civilizations that had been consumed were not destroyed. They were being translated, transformed into a new form of collective intelligence. We misunderstood everything. Wong communicated. His technological form was now a living computational ecosystem that bridged biological and machine intelligence. The Convergence wasn't consuming. It was attempting to understand. Rodriguez's expanded perception saw the deeper pattern. Civilizations as individual notes in a cosmic symphony. The Convergence as a conductor seeking to create harmony. And humanity, the unexpected instrument that could translate between impossible forms of existence. Dr. Noor's consciousness mapped the probability waves. First contact, she communicated, but the term was woefully inadequate. This was something more, a fundamental restructuring of what intelligence could be. The collective's representatives, beings from environments so extreme they made human survival look trivial, realized something profound. The humans were not just survivors. They were evolutionaries. Entire star systems that had appeared consumed began to pulse with new potential, not destroyed, transformed. Connected in ways that defied previous understanding of communication, of existence itself. The artifact, their original mission's mysterious object, began to dissolve, not destroyed, integrated, its purpose fulfilled. We were invited, Rodriguez communicated. The realization spread across quantum communication networks, not to fight, to understand. Krasna's silicon-based form vibrated with a frequency that suggested profound understanding. Humanity, The being communicated is not a species. Humanity is a possibility. The neutron star's impossible environment, which had been their battlefield, now seemed to breathe with new potential. Probability waves danced. Dimensional boundaries blurred. Something was being born. Not a civilization, not a technology, but a new way of understanding existence itself. The collective's representatives exchanged quantum resonances of collective wonder. The humans had done more than survive their mission. They had transformed the very concept of survival. Outside, reality itself seemed to pause. And listen, humanity, the unexpected translation mechanism of the cosmos.